I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing.
Antifa!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of the Katie Halper Show. We have we have a bunch of really great guests for you today. So excited. We're going to be bringing on some people live from Minneapolis. We're going to be talking to people in Canada. We're going to be talking to people in New York. And we're going to be covering things ranging from Gaza to Minneapolis. We're also going to be covering the connection between those two things. Our full show is wonderful. We have a really great lineup. We are going to be playing at the end of the show. We are going to be playing an interview that I did with the wonderful Stephen Kapos and Haim Bresheeth Zabner. They are both part of Holocaust survivors and descendants against the genocide. They are going to talk to us about Holocaust Commemoration Day, which is today, and also the weaponization of the Holocaust to justify genocide. They are people who actually think, lo and behold, that the lesson of the Holocaust is never again for anyone, as in it shouldn't be used to justify another genocide, as it is being done in Gaza. Then before that, we are going to be speaking to Amy Greer, one of Mahmoud Khalil's lawyers, and we have to get an update from her on his very important case. Before that, we'll be talking to Mouin Rabbani, the wonderful Palestinian analyst. We'll be talking about the connection between Gaza and Minneapolis, and also the Gaza Peace Board and the latest on that. And the Gaza Board of Peace. I like the way I call it, the Gaza Peace Board, like I'm on a first name basis with it or a nickname basis with it. But our first guest is joining us live from Minneapolis, and that is Greg Stoker, who is a former Army Ranger. He is an anti-war veteran. He has a background in special ops and human intelligence collection, and he is running for Congress. And just a reminder that in order to see this full show, you can become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Also, please like the stream. That's a great way to fight back against the algorithmic suppression, and become subscribers, because we are doing these additional live streams and you don't want to miss those. And to do that, you hit subscribe and then the bell. Also, if you didn't catch our amazing interview with Jeremy Corbyn live, make sure you become a Patreon supporter to see that full thing. Again, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. If you can't afford the $5 a month level, you can still support the show at the $1 a month level. So first guest coming on right now, Greg Stoker. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, hope you can hear me, and hope the cold up here in Minneapolis doesn't kill my phone. So if I drop off.
Oh, right. It's going to be it may zap it. Yeah. So how cold is it there, by the way?
I don't know. I haven't checked. It's well below freezing. So I got everything phone wrapped in hand warmers. I'm currently right outside the federal building where there's a protest going on. It's a rally to start spreading the word for another general strike on January 30th.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you were there last night, and one of your comrades, Josephine, who we've actually had on the show, she's another veteran. You guys interrupted Congress together. I believe she was arrested. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so a bunch of local activists found where Greg Bovino was staying, and they hosted an impromptu noise protest. It's something we've been doing it like people have been doing, like when Netanyahu comes to DC. It's throughout ICE in the country. It's a way to exercise your First Amendment rights and try to hold people accountable, since we don't have the monopoly of state violence, and our government is clearly incapable, lacking the infrastructure to prosecute or hold any sort of law enforcement officers accountable. So it's just people-powered noise protests. They pulled in local PD in Maple Grove, and they are the ones that did the arresting, not ICE. The ICE people were actually a real Occupy Wall Street moment. They were on the third level of the hotel, looking out at the protesters while the local PD arrested them, like a bunch of aristocrats. So It was kind of wild.
Well, I thought that the police were the good guys and ICE were the bad guys.
Yeah, that's kind of mentality is all this reminds me of the global war on terror. I've spoken to Iraqis who are like, I was so happy when the Marines pulled out and they were in the battle space was taken over by the 101st Airborne Division, because they're not as brutal as the Marines. They shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Right.
So all of this talk about, oh, the National Guard was handing out donuts and coffee. That is a hearts and minds psyop. There should be no National Guard here. Like, what are we even talking about? So, yeah, definitely very critical of this police presence. Obviously, all the violence comes from the state in reaction to people standing on the road and exercising their First Amendment rights. So that's kind of what we're seeing this battle play out. This is the front line for the national struggle against this police overreach.
Yeah. So it is interesting because the media is definitely trying to make it like a divide and conquer, but of good versus evil, where the police are good and reasonable and ICE is being out of control. And that's a really appealing narrative, I think, for a lot of people, especially for liberals.
It is the most lib stuff ever. And I would like to say one thing about this. Abolish ICE is a centrist, ineffective Democrat position. Obviously, ICE should be abolished, but everything from the global war on terror, from the Patriot Act to ICE needs to be dismantled, root and branch. This is the forever war coming back home. It's not going to be done in Iran. It's not going to be done in Venezuela. I've been talking about this for years. It's finally here. The next forever war is here. It's for profit, and it's against our own people, and it's being used by the oligarchs and the tech billionaires. They are trying to control collapse or turn collapse into control. So we're kind of like in hyper normalization right now, where everybody sees all our generations old Republican institutions falling apart. There's no effective leadership. There's no plan. And we need to start building alternative sources of power outside of the state, across party lines and political ideologies. And that's what we're seeing here in Minneapolis. Community defense, rapid response team, mutual aid. That's all stuff that the government will not offer you. Okay? It has nothing to offer you but violence.
Right. And I actually wanted to show a video of your protest, your noise protest outside of Bovino's hotel. Let's take a look.
Standing by.
Looking up out there.
I think we're looking at Greg Bovino himself.
And this is Abby, the wonderful Abby Martin is here. And then you can tell us about Josephine's arrest. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the head of ICE, that weasel up there in the window, taunting us. All these cops, tear gas people, surround us. It's absolutely insane. You just heard that they already started tear gassing people. They're stacked up, dude. We're waiting for them to see what they're going to do next.
Yeah, and I would like to point out that these are local police. Okay, one sec.
Public safety, I hereby declare this an unlawful assembly. You are in violation of Minnesota State Statute 609.705, unlawful assembly. I'm now issuing a public safety order to disperse and order all those assembled in front of the residents here to disperse immediately and cease your unlawful behavior, which means leave the area peacefully. If you do not do so, you may be subject to arrest.
You came just in time.
I've been here. I've been with them.
Oh, okay.
They're going to start shooting less than lethal rounds.
Yeah.
Essentially blinding people. They've already blinded like 2 people in the last 2 weeks.
And I would like to point out that these are local police protecting and doing this on the behalf of ICE agents. So when you try to make a difference, when you try to differentiate between them, local police, and the National Guard, I don't really know what you're talking about.
They're doing this on behalf of ICE. They're doing this to protect ICE.
All right, I'm going to post this before it's crazy.
All right. So, and tell us about Josephine's arrest.
Yeah, she was there to just kind of observe. She really wasn't taking a part in it. There was other journalists there that got wrapped up, and they kind of sent in a flanking squad to kettle some people. She got stuck in the kettle and put on a bus. They were going to they took them from Maple Grove, which is a suburb, back to downtown Minneapolis. They were going to hold them, weaponize bureaucracy and hold them for like 36 hours because there were no charges. They couldn't charge anybody with anything. So, she just got released today. So That's kind of the unconventional campaign we're running. My campaign manager just got wrapped up by the police and
Oh,
released
you gave
today.
it
So,
away. You
oh
gave
no.
it away, but we'll shift to that shortly.
Yeah,
In fact,
sorry.
we can shift to that now because it's actually related. So you are running for office, and we have your campaign video, which we can play part of. Brad, let me know when his campaign video is ready. We were going to do that later on in the interview, but we might as well get to it. Give me a thumbs up or just let me. Oh, it is in there, but I do want to get back to the question of, because this is so important, of the psyops as you described it. And by the way, someone in the comments, I think sarcastically, said you were a psyop because you were in intelligence. But I feel like if you were a psyop, wouldn't you not admit that you had been in intelligence?
I don't know, man. The psyops are psyoping layer on layer of psyops.
Right.
Hopefully, I can allay some of their suspicions when I lay out my campaign as an anti-campaign. That
Yeah.
So okay.
All right. So let's play a part of your campaign video.
So Texas District 31 is a packed race with a whole cast of characters. We got an 84-year-old incumbent clinging on to power in order to maintain the status quo. We got Valentina Gomez and her flamethrower, the Israeli ShamWow guy, and some Democrats. But really, who cares about them? We're not going to agree on everything, all right? But let's start here. My name is Greg Stoker, combat veteran. I'm not taking any corporate or PAC money, and I'm running for Texas Congressional District 31. Check out our website if you want to help out and learn more. I'm not going to be running a conventional campaign. I haven't hired a DC consultant to turn me into a fake person for your consumption. So if you need a slogan, Greg Stoker, just a guy who's literally not insane.
All right. So, well, that's a great description.
Yeah, it's a low bar to clear in this day and age in our political landscape for sure.
Yeah, well, speaking of one of your opponents, I mean, you have the Democrat, right, who's in power right now, and then you have this wonderful woman, Valentina Gomez, who is a 26-year-old immigrant from Medellin, Colombia, which makes it. You'll see why I'm mentioning that. It's pretty ironic. Is the person who you are trying to unseat a Democrat or Republican, which is he's a
84-year-old Republican who's held power in the district since 2003.
Sorry, Republican. Yeah. I called him a Democrat, although that kind of is on brand for
what's the difference?
Exactly. Yeah. So let's take a look at Valentina.
It's that simple. Public executions for any illegal that rapes or kills an American. They don't deserve deportation. They deserve to be ended.
Okay, play it again once more, Brad, please, so people can see from the very beginning.
It's that simple.
Is it? It's not playing on my end from the beginning. So yeah, okay. Everyone look. So there's a dummy, hopefully, tied to a chair. Okay.
It's that simple. Public executions for any illegal that rapes or kills an American. They don't deserve deportation. They deserve to be ended.
And she's very racist against Latinos and also against Muslims, extremely Islamophobic.
Well, she's a red state hopper. She was first running for a state legislature in Missouri, I think, where she first got the flamethrower to torch LGBTQ plus literature. So
right, I forgot about that. Yeah, she's well-rounded. She's like a Renaissance woman.
Yeah,
I shouldn't erase. That was erasure to forget that she's also a raging homophobe.
Yeah, so basically, no one, even the hugely racist people in Texas, don't take her seriously. You know, she's great at like creating viral sensations on X, but that's about it. There's no policy platform. There's no definable goals or anything like that. So I'm pretty much not going to engage with her or people like that. So our entire position is nonpartisan politics, meeting people together and meeting them where they're at. It's a highly we want to make it a highly community driven campaign. And the reason I kind of envision it as an anti-campaign, because I don't think electoral politics can save us. This system was founded on violence and has only violence to give us, except, for, accumulating extraordinary wealth for a few individuals. So we would like to use a campaign, and I believe in a role in electoral politics to agitate, educate, and organize people to build alternative sources of power outside of the government itself. I'm concerned that we're in an era of collapse, and a lot of other thinkers have thought that there is a point in using these decaying Republican institutions in order to prepare for that. So that's kind of my position, and that's what we kind of want to try to test run in this district, which is heavily Republican. And the more people I talk to, the more we agree on than not. So we are eschewing the culture war and identity politics because the house is on fire. So we're going to focus on affordability, accountability for Texas politicians who sell out Texans to corporations and foreign interests. Huge problem in there. And take it one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, the news that people are talking about right now, understandably, is that Greg Bovino, who does really dress like a Nazi, and the Hugo Boss.
Timu Heydrich.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He has departed from his job as Border Patrol commander, which people are really excited about. But the problem is that Border Czar Tom Homan is taking over. Let's hear from Greg Bovino. And this is an interview he did before he was dismissed.
In fact, it feels as though in some ways you're blaming the victim here.
And this is about the shooting of Alex Pretti.
The victims are the Border Patrol agents. I'm not blaming the Border Patrol agents. The victim are the Border Patrol agents. The suspect put himself in that situation. The victims are the Border Patrol agents there.
Okay, so that's obviously disgusting, and he is over the top evil.
It's giving Israeli military on all fronts.
Yes, exactly. In fact, we're going to talk about that with our next guest. But it is. And I didn't know this until recently. They blocked medical aid, which is another very IDF move. They blocked a doctor from reaching Alex Pretti to perhaps, who knows, they could have saved his life. The problem is, and a lot of people are getting excited. The problem is, of course, that Tom Homan is not someone to get excited about. And he is a total cruel sadist. And actually, he was put into power by Obama, speaking of the bipartisan nature of this machine. And I also want to show something about what the Democrats are doing. And, I don't mean to pick on this person. His name is the Main Wonk. And he described, let me just do a screen share here. Again, sorry, Main Wonk, I didn't plan on picking on you, but it's pretty relevant. So this person on Twitter's name is the Main Wonk, and he describes himself as a radical centrist policy wonk, middle class advocate. Okay, and the reason I'm showing this is because he had a post that I thought was interesting, where he was very excited about what the Democrats were doing. Hold on one second. Actually, let me get that. 1 second. Okay, let me make this. Okay, then I got to add this. But now everyone got a chance to see that great account, and you'll understand what it means. Okay, so this is what he tweeted with a lot of excitement. Hearing Senate Dems will hold the line. DHS ICE reforms. DHS must cooperate with state probes. CBP stays at border. Warrant for arrest. Visible IDs and body cams. ICE out of churches and schools. Losing fake masks. Limited to use of force standards. But as the great Adam Johnson pointed out, who has a great podcast called Citations Needed, and he's a really great media critic. Meaningless, unenforceable. Meaningless, they'll just offset with ICE. Already not legal. Passing laws to enforce existing laws is nonsensical. Meaningless, nice but trivial. Nice but trivial, meaningless, easily gameable. So that he kind of goes through all those points. So how do we juggle, or how do we achieve change right now in a way that isn't purely superficial and cosmetic? Because I wouldn't be surprised if Kristi Noem also goes.
So let's just taking this one step at a time. Everyone's agitated right now. All right, there are different political ideologies are shifting, coalescing, collapsing in on each other. Now is the time because everyone's worked up on both sides of all sides of the political perspective. Now's the time to educate people. I could talk about like what mutual aid and community defense looks like, blah, blah, blah. No, now's the education time. This is how we can actually reach entrenched liberal positions, because they're not only are the contradictions of the entire system just heightening to an absurd level, the hypocrisy is just absolutely insane. We now have a decade, I'd say since 2016, of Democrats doing this and losing. And they are pathologically, as an establishment, incapable of siding with anything that doesn't that challenges the power of the ruling class. Right. So the Tom Homan thing is a great example. I have been talking to people all day, along with a bunch of other folks, because this has brought out like liberals and Democratic voters from the suburbs to come to the memorial sites of these two people. And we've been doing like outreach. They're like, oh, Greg Bovino's gone. Yeah, but someone who does it worse than Bovino makes it less clownish. So it's actually kind of more insidious, so that you can just like go back to brunch while the deporter in chief gets his way. That's what got us here in the first place. I do not think that ICE can be reformed. I don't think the DHS can be reformed. Nothing that came out of the global war on terror can be reformed. That is not a radical position. And we have been so propagandized and militarized, I'm third generation. I was third generation Army, so that's a whole different thing. But over the past 20 years, we've been conditioned to think like, this is just how it is. This is just what's acceptable. None of it is acceptable. Why do we keep pretending like America didn't, or countries didn't exist before ICE was founded? Like, we don't need any of this. We literally do not need any of this. And we need to deprogram from thinking that this is the only way it can be.
Yes. Amen to that. And can you explain to people, by the way, because a lot of people may not know this, especially depending on how old they are, how ICE comes out of the war on terror?
Yeah, it was founded in 2003, or around the time of the Iraq War, as kind of this pseudo like extra legal squad that didn't really have any defined characteristics. That we already had Customs and Border Patrol and INS. Like, why did we need ICE? Right. It was completely superfluous. They were just making all these different federal agencies and appendages of the state just because they could, because they had unlimited funding, and it was made on a faulty premise. We know that every aspect of the global war on terror, with the exception of capital accumulation for the defense and ruling class peoples, was a failure. So a lot of people are kind of despairing and seeing this crackdown as a destruction of America. Bro, this is America, okay? It's just being done to you personally now. And people are scared. People think that if the war on terror is going to come home, they're going to win. When have we won? Okay, like all of our guns, our bombs, our surveillance tech, all of the massive security apparatus that went into the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that didn't work out. It's not going to work out here if we get organized and we start doing something that actually challenges the state, because we don't live in a representative democracy. Remember, citizens united, corporations are people. Let's go. And so now is the time to teach people.
Okay, so your campaign is an educational opportunity, right?
I mean, that's kind of how I see it. Like, if you really hate me and want me to suffer, you should vote for me, because then I'd have to go to Congress.
Well, there are some people. I mean, Brad always tells me, all the haters should volunteer. Everyone who hates Greg should volunteer for him. There are some people in the comments, and as Brad always says, the comments are like the sun. You shouldn't look directly at it. Yeah. But there are some people in the chats who are hating on you. And I actually think that you would probably want to hear what they're saying, because someone is saying, what about reparations for Afghanistan? They're criticizing you for having fought multiple times, having served multiple times. The same person also says you're a Zionist.
That's crazy.
That one I don't really. Were you ever a Zionist? Like, before you were anti-war, were you even a Zionist? Or
I didn't even really know what Zionism was until I got into the military. And the military thought the IDF lost the war against Hezbollah in 2009, and they were kind of a joke. So, or 2006, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, what about reparations for Afghanistan, and what do you say to people who are angry that you ever served in the U.S. military?
Well, I think it was who thought that. I think it was Bad Empanada. Came after me. Look, I was talking to Abby Martin. Her husband's Mike Preisner, Empire Files. He gets this kind of dog pile too. It's always going to happen.
Yeah.
In terms of that, I think I've dedicated my life to fighting against the United States war machine and imperialism. I was completely ready to, not exist anymore during the flotilla where I was put in Israeli military prison. I think my actions have kind of demonstrated it. and I also don't want to get pulled into like left-wing infighting. First of all, that's not even my campaign position. Reparations for Afghanistan and Iraq, I think it just as a baseline begins with us just not messing with those countries anymore. Like there's a lot of work to be done before reparations, which I actually think we owe to most of the world. Okay. Yeah. Like what I want for Afghanistan is us to finally like actually stop as a policy position wanting to get Bagram Air Base back in order to isolate China. Like we can take really basic steps now to become a sane nation in a multipolar world. And I try to explain to people like the empire is destroying you too. So yeah, I don't think I'll be able to really reach everybody.
Sure.
And I think I've been very open about how much I regret my military service and being part of that. So I think we're just going to move onward and upward. And I don't know. I've been pretty open about wanting to activate vets again politically, like the Vietnam backlash, because the two most radical and organized organizations who organized together were Veterans Against the War and the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
All right. And so, and one of the reasons the Black Panthers actually survived their first encounters with SWAT teams was because they had veterans in their ranks training everybody. So everyone has their role, and the bottom line is you're not gonna be able to keep veterans out of the movement, and we also don't need anyone's permission to fight against the state violence. Now,
sorry.
And I'm not trying to take a pugnacious position on it. It's just we're going to be here and we're going to be out in the streets. So
well, yeah, I think that the problem is if everyone who had ever done bad things, not to sound corny, but like anyone who had ever done bad things was excluded from the movement, we wouldn't have any former vets in the anti-war movement, and they are the strongest, I would say, anti-war voices. I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your ass. Like they are, I think, more convincing than anyone else. And also there is a human shield aspect to it where they wouldn't have, I mean, I don't want to say they wouldn't have because that's giving the state too much credit, but certainly they were more reluctant to shoot and kill veterans than they were to shoot and kill members of the Black Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a role. This is ours. And also, like, I think this kind of thinking is bad and counter-revolutionary, because if you have that thinking, you're never going to get another whistleblower on anything ever again.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So keep going, guys. We're also not listening to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I wanted to, I feel like you wanted, I mean, I feel like you could, that was a healthy thing for you to respond to, right? Because I'm sure you're getting it. And this is a safe space. And I'm obviously biased in that I don't agree with the framing of someone who has done bad things in the past has no place. And that's why I also have Anthony Aguilar on the show. Because again, the movement, even if you morally rejected it, which I don't, we couldn't strategically and pragmatically exclude people like that because the movement wouldn't be big enough and robust enough.
I was like, I don't know. I was part of a fucking imperial death machine. I also never discharged my weapon overseas, but you can't prove a negative. So we just got to move on and try to save ourselves and all come together on this issue.
Right. What was your aha moment, by the way?
The aha moment, it took years. The aha moment was we were forced to go out on this night raid. There's really no intelligence behind it, but it was under the Obama's Afghan surge, so it was just like drone strikes and special operations missions. We didn't, kind of reminded me of ICE, because these guys aren't going off intel, they're just hitting stuff like known, likely, and suspected targets. And we hit this place. There's a dry hole, traumatized a bunch of kids, obviously, because we're large and horrifying, and a lot of the house was destroyed. This compound we shouldn't have been in. Shouldn't have even been in Afghanistan. But we were supposed to like pay for the damages, and someone, because I was like the platoon intel guy, gave me the wrong amount of money, and it was like $10 to do it. And this old man just like looked at me, and it was the first time I was like, through all the propaganda, that I was like legitimately like ashamed. And and it's still like, it took years. I had to go to like college and start studying post-colonial theory, and Edward Said's Orientalism kind of made so much sense to me. Yeah. So, just took a long time.
So how do we and you've been generous with your time, and so we're gonna let you go soon because you're also at a protest. But how do we? I mean, I have trouble with this balance, which is acknowledging that Trump has a cruelty that the Democrats don't, like a spectacle of cruelty, right?
Yeah.
But that, the Democrats obviously work hand in hand with Trump and enable Trump. So how do we fight these two things at the same time without falling prey to, I guess, like obsessing over the corporate duopoly? And what else do you think that people who are out there on the streets need to know? And how are we going to defeat the powers that be, given that we are, that they control all the state and have a lot of violence at their command?
Well, it starts with you doing something as revolutionary as meeting your neighbor. Do you know who your neighbors are? A lot of people don't anymore. We are so isolated and alone, and it's been constructed that way that even doing something as crazy as starting a community food kitchen gets you assassinated. So we all have to start pitching in. We all have to change the culture collectively. And this is, again, a hugely educational opportunity for everybody going forward. So no left versus right, no war but class war. That's my position.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and it was really wonderful speaking to you. And good luck, and thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for risking your life by going on the flotilla.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There's another one in March if y'all want to sign up. I obviously can't make it. There's also one to Venezuela too, but I don't.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to sign up, it's there. So cheers, y'all, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Have a great night.
All right. Cheers.
Bye. All right. That was wonderful. Everyone, make sure that you like the stream if you haven't already liked it, and give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe. And if you can become Patreon supporters, please do that. Become Patreon supporters. And we are really excited to be bringing on our next guest. He is a Palestinian analyst who has been on the show so many times, and every time he comes on, I learn so much from him. So welcome, Mouin.
Hi, Katie. It's very good to be with you again.
Thank you. You are someone who is very prolific, and everyone should follow you on Twitter because you actually write kind of like essays on Twitter. You basically have Substack and what could be Substack entries on Twitter. I want to transition from the conversation we just had with Greg. And Greg, obviously is someone who's anti-war, has been on the flotilla.
It's a fascinating discussion.
Yeah, it is, right? I'm actually curious what you think as someone who you must have come into contact with people who used to be Zionists who are now, anti-Zionist. How do you see that moral trajectory?
People change and evolve. I mean, if you go back to, for example, the Vietnam War, the anti-war movement was in very significant part led by war veterans. These were people who were drafted straight out of high school for the most part. It's not unusual for teenagers to be patriotic and indoctrinated. They were sent off to a foreign war to kill and murder a foreign population. It opened their eyes, and they became the spearhead of the anti-war movement. And you saw that certainly in Iraq and Afghanistan. There have been prominent Israeli peace activists or anti-Zionist activists who, it's also a society that has conscription and so on. And I prefer to judge people on their current politics and their current position and their current perspectives and activism, particularly if they have taken accountability for what they have done in the past. I mean, you can't constantly ignore what someone is and has become because of what they once were. As Norman Finkelstein likes to say, I think quoting the African novelist Aimé Césaire, there's room for all at the rendezvous of victory.
Oh, wow. That is a great quote. I don't think I've ever heard that, but yeah. And of course, Cesar is the person who developed the imperial boomerang concept, which is so applicable to what we're seeing right now. I wanted to actually ask you about the connection between Gaza and Minneapolis by way of looking at, trigger warning, everyone, looking at a headline and article by Thomas Friedman of the New York Times.
Thanks for the trigger warning.
I know, right? I should have told you to take a Dramamine. And by the way, everyone give this a thumbs up. If you haven't already liked this, give this a like and share it on social media, because Mouin's voice is extremely important. And we want to make sure that as many people come and see him and the show, of course, self-interestedly the show, but also really want to make sure everyone sees Mouin and hears Mouin. So here is the headline by Thomas Friedman. Minneapolis and Gaza now share the same violent language. So I think some people were excited when they saw that headline, like, oh my God, he finally gets it. But no, as Layla Al-Arian writes at the top of this tweet, Thomas Friedman, who has compared Arabs to insects, now compares ICE, a state agency, to Hamas. Let's take a look at that, at the article. I send a screenshot. Brad, let me know if you need me to send it to you again. I may have, hold on a second.
It should be on screen right now, Katie.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Hamas and ICE also share one very visible trait that I never thought I'd see in the United States. Almost all of their foot soldiers wear masks. My experience as a reporter in the Middle East taught me that people wear masks because they are up to something bad and don't want their faces captured on camera. I saw it often in Beirut and in Gaza. I never expected to see it in Minneapolis. Since when have America's domestic policing forces, charged with defending the Constitution and the rule of law, felt the need to hide their identities? I understand why Hamas fighters wear masks. They have both Israeli and Palestinian blood on their hands and fear retribution. But if you placed a photo of an ICE officer next to a Hamas militiaman in a news quiz, I would defy you to tell them apart. Memo to the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem. This is not a good look. What are you hiding? Okay, so Mouin, please let us know your thoughts on this.
Well, once, Thomas Friedman once again reveals his staggering ignorance. When we see pictures of Israeli soldiers, the only instances in which they're not wearing masks is because their faces have been blurred or they're facing away from the camera. But, more broadly, ICE is a state agency. It's essentially a government militia. And to compare that, it's being experienced now by many in Minneapolis as an occupation force. I think Greg Stoker spoke about this in your previous segment. And to compare that to Palestinians who are under occupation and not to the occupiers, the Israeli occupiers, is just, it's ideology, which is what Thomas Friedman does and doesn't do particularly well. But for some reason, by US standards, he's considered an authority on foreign affairs and particularly on the Middle East.
Right, exactly. And, I think it's interesting that let's show a tweet from another totally ignorant, idiotic guy, Eitan Fishberger. Let's see how he responded to this article. No, Tom Friedman, ICE officers wearing masks so they don't get doxxed is not the same as Hamas terrorists wearing masks while slaughtering thousands of innocent people living under its tyranny. What the hell is wrong with you? So this is another interesting angle, which is how dare you? So we are mad at Thomas Friedman for one reason, and then you have insane sociopaths who are mad at him because ICE is good, actually, according to them.
Yeah, and I think, the thing to understand about these Israel flunkies is that you can never be loyal enough. 99.99% loyalty is treason. And you can never, do enough for the cause as far as they are concerned. And I think this is a very good example of that.
Right. Well, speaking of media, and then we're going to transition to your really great piece on the Board of Peace in Gaza, which is very Orwellian. Layla Al-Arian had a great response to something. Again, this is a very Layla centered show. and she's a great journalist at
Oh, as it should
Al
be.
Jazeera, as it should be. Yeah, exactly. So, wanted to ask you about the double standard with which our Western media is viewing Israeli crimes and ICE crimes. And one person who made actually a kind of surprisingly good video exposing the lies of Kristi Noem was CNN's Jake Tapper. And I want to take a look at this video, and then we're going to contrast this video with his voice on other issues. So let's take a look at the Jake Tapper video, please.
Show you a video that CNN just obtained of the shooting, and I'm going to overlay on the video of
and this is Alex Pretti shooting.
The shooting of Alex Pretti, the description of the shooting that we all heard from the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. And I want you to see if her description matches what you see in the video. The first image you're going to see is Alex Pretti, this 37-year-old ICU nurse from the Minneapolis VA who was shot and killed today by federal agents. The first image you're going to see is him standing in the middle of the street of Minneapolis, holding his cell phone, filming these federal agents.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
There's still a lot we don't know about this shooting. Apparently, Pretti had a gun on him. He also had a concealed carry permit, according to law enforcement. It looks as though, in the video, that his gun was taken from him by law enforcement before he was shot. It also looks as though he never actually held his gun or reached for his gun, at least based on the 3 or 4 videos we've seen of the event. Still a lot of unanswered questions, but just tell me what you think. Did what you saw on that video square with how Secretary Noem described it?
So that is the kind of, I think, very good social media, use of social media that would be great to see when it comes to Palestine and Gaza. And it is an interesting controlled experiment because it shows us that Jake Tapper has the critical thinking skills to see through propaganda and to apply skepticism and critical thinking to state lies, something we don't see when it comes to Gaza. And so Layla Al-Arian tweeted that and wrote, "Great, now do Israel." So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, precisely. I mean, we're not talking about the US media, for example, applying more scrutiny to the Palestinians than they do to Israel, which is considered a strategic ally by much of the U.S. political elite. What we're looking at here is a media that applies more scrutiny to the actions of its own government, the U.S. government, in ways that it would never even contemplate applying to a foreign power, Israel. And that's what's so bizarre about the situation, is that you have journalists prepared to apply journalistic standards to their own government that they have never contemplated applying to Israel. I mean, the idea, when I think in this particular incident, what you have now are US journalists and reporters feeling they have been misled and lied to so often by the Trump administration,
right,
that they feel comfortable exposing its fabrications. And I think that the overlay of Noem's Noam's account of events while seeing what actually happened was very powerful. But they also know that they are consistently lied to by the Israeli military and the Israeli government. Yet every time it's considered truth until proven otherwise. You never really see, or extremely rarely see such reporting about Israel. Israel is given the benefit of the doubt, despite its record of prevarication and fabrication and fraud, whereas Palestinians who present substantiated, verified information are treated with skepticism and of course, completely marginalized in reporting.
Right. You know, it's interesting. The one time I saw Jake Tapper push back on an Israeli official was Mark Regev, the former ambassador.
This is when a CNN reporter was
Exactly.
shot or killed.
Or his family members were killed.
Yeah, yeah.
And he basically, Regev said something like, well, they were where they shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And Tapper was like, where should they have gone? Where are they supposed to go? Because they were in Gaza. And that was it. I mean, it was like you could see his personal relationship with this one person overrode his brainwashing or his personal relationships I'm sure he's had throughout his life to people who are Zionists.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was one of their own.
Exactly right.
The CNN reporter, but also much more recently, you have the case of a CBS reporter in the Gaza Strip who was killed by the Israeli military. I think this was in the past week or so.
Yeah.
And CBS's reporting on it basically regurgitated the Israeli propaganda and smears of their own reporter. So, not even raising serious doubts about the Israeli story, but this is the era of Barry Weiss.
Right. It's her network.
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Of course.
Right. Yes. Let's take a look at Margaret Brennan actually talking about the killing of this Palestinian reporter and cameraman.
Before we go, we wanted to note the death of 30-year-old Abed Shaat, a freelance cameraman who has worked with CBS News throughout the Israel-Hamas war. Abed was killed
again, just Israel-Hamas war.
Yes.
I mean, it's just an amazing way to get sneak your ideology into that.
You frame it from the outset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As if this is a war on Hamas and not a war on all of.
As if it's a war.
A war, exactly, and not a genocide. Precisely. I'm going to start from the beginning. So
before we go, we wanted to note the death of 30-year-old Abed Shaat, a freelance cameraman who has worked with CBS News throughout the Israel-Hamas war. Abed was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Wednesday, along with 2 other journalists. Shaat was filming aid distribution with a group called the Egyptian Humanitarian Committee, and the EHC says the vehicle he was in was marked with its logo. The Israel Defense Forces say the strike targeted a Hamas-affiliated drone. The Committee to Protect Journalists reports that more than 250 media workers have been killed in Gaza since the October 7th attacks.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on that? Which is slightly better than the Tony DeCouple thing, where they didn't even mention the dangerous number of people killed by journalists killed by Israel.
CBS is a spectator here. The organization has not demanded an investigation into the killing of one of its own. Certainly isn't remotely considering any measure to demand accountability for the kill. You work for these organizations, you become a marked man, and not only that, when you are killed because you're working for these organizations, they will wash their hands of you. They will have absolutely nothing to do with you. It's a very high risk endeavor, and what impresses me so much is that these journalists, like this one, they go into it knowing exactly that there is a genuine likelihood that they will pay the ultimate price, and that if they do, those for whom they work will basically abandon them and throw them under an Israeli bomb, so to speak. It's really obscene when you consider it.
Yes, it is obscene. And it makes their commitment to that work all the more heroic.
Yes.
And of course, like, heartbreaking, because they should not be. I mean, no one should be killed there, but it is. I mean, I think this way about the doctors also. They know that they're being targeted. The health workers know that they're being targeted.
And being targeted because of the function that they are fulfilling.
Exactly. Right. Because you have to not have, when you're bombing all these people, you can't have any hospitals running, because God forbid they get treated. And you can't have any eyes or ears communicating to the rest of the world. Let's take a look actually at this same reporter who condemned Israel's targeting of journalists months before he himself was killed by them. I'll read it. This is a continuous shelling. Sorry, let me start that. Okay. This is a continuous shelling and a direct targeting of journalists. Every day we bid farewell to a journalist, but we will continue on this path. Sorry, but we will continue on this path we have chosen. Their mission will also continue. And he holds up the camera very defiantly. Deliberate targeting of the camera, which appears to everyone. It's vivid, that's a camera. And its holders are known to the whole world. They work for foreign agencies. And of course, he's wearing a press vest, which makes it all the more apparent. And as we all know, Israel could care less about that. And in fact, actually targets them for that.
Imagine getting up and going to work every day. Put aside for the moment the extraordinarily challenging circumstances under which these people work. But imagine going to work every day, knowing that there is a real chance that you will not return home that evening, and that the reason you will not return home is because you're fulfilling this vitally important function. He must have known, given how many Palestinian journalists have already been killed by Israel in these targeted assassinations, he must have known that it was only a matter of time before his turn came. Yet, with extraordinary commitment, with extraordinary professionalism, each and every day, he got up and did his job and kept us informed about the horrific realities in the Gaza Strip. And just to get back to the earlier part of our discussion, every time Israel does this, either the Israeli government or its spokesman or its prominent flunkies abroad, all they have to do is say, he was Hamas or he was Islamic Jihad. And that is then parroted by the mainstream media as the objective standard truth, unless and until it is dismantled and proven to be a lie. Very different from what we're seeing now with this health worker who was summarily executed in Minneapolis, where the burden of proof is on those who pumped bullets into his body to demonstrate that they were in any way acting legitimately and within the law.
Right. And do you see a connection between the violence that's being perpetrated in Gaza with the logistical, diplomatic, financial, militaristic support of the U.S. and what is happening here? Because a lot of people call this like the domestic front. I mean, there's violence happening here, and there's also this crackdown on protests in terms of speech and physical.
Yes, I do think there is a connection. And I think it was Greg Stoker who, in the previous segment, was saying that, it was what the United States does abroad is bound to come home in one way or another. The way I would put this is, if you remember, during the illegal war in Iraq, and when the U.S. Went through huge amounts of military material, a lot of the surplus was then provided to U.S. police forces throughout the country. And this led to a real militarization of U.S. policing, and the consequences for that are there to see throughout the country. Here it's working a little differently. First of all, I don't know about Minneapolis specifically, but many U.S. police forces have relations with their Israeli counterparts. They train with their Israeli counterparts. But more importantly, for the past few years, there has been a systematic campaign, an effort, which is not limited to Trump, by the way. It began under Biden to kind of dismantle every norm and value that underpins the protection of civilian life, that makes every civilian a legitimate target. And sure, you can, the thing to understand is that what happens in Gaza doesn't stay in Gaza. And the logic that these people are constantly advocating and promoting halfway around the world can then be very easily applied within the United States, and that's what we see happening. I mean, when this latest health worker in Minneapolis was essentially summarily executed, the immediate response from senior government officials was he was a domestic terrorist.
Exactly.
Well, where else have we seen that term used as a license to murder tens of thousands of children and civilians in unprecedented proportions over the past 2 years?
It's interesting. Until you put it that way, I hadn't made the connection between the fact that he was an ICU, a nurse, and then the attack on healthcare workers that we were just talking about. And he himself was trying to help a woman who was shoved by one of these thugs. And then when someone tried to assist him, they were blocked, which is one step better than what happens in Gaza, where when you try to assist someone, you are yourself killed.
Well,
So,
and within the Israeli military, it has for decades been standard practice that when someone is wounded, medical aid is prohibited. Ambulances or healthcare workers that seek to approach these wounded individuals are prohibited, and even violently prohibited from lending assistance. People have been killed trying to
exactly.
lend assistance. And, I don't have any statistics, but it would be very interesting to one day learn how many people ultimately succumbed to non-fatal wounds because they were denied healthcare that was available, but was prevented from administering it. And the case in Minnesota, I don't know if those who killed him knew he was a healthcare worker, but quite clearly it was because he came to the assistance of this woman that he was targeted and pumped full of lead.
Right. Yes. Right. So he wasn't intentionally targeted in the way that other healthcare workers are. But I was just thinking it's ironic that
he was targeted because he was providing assistance.
Exactly. Right.
Whether they knew he was a professional nurse is a different question.
Right. Perfectly said. Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I think that there are a couple things if you compare the Renee Good and this case. One is that the Renee Good case, I mean, I think they were both murder, like without question. The Renee Good case, I found a little bit, it was a little confusing at first, even though I didn't for a second think she had done anything like remotely threatening to him. But also in fact, one of the reasons it was obviously a killing and not self-defense was precisely because she was driving away. In this case, it was almost the opposite because you had multiple men ganging up on one person. There was I thought a visceral brutality to it. Again, it's not like the other one was watchable, but there was a visceral brutality to it. And it was so much clearer what was happening.
I try not to watch these snuff videos. But all the accounts I've read are that they had him under their full control. They disarmed him and assured themselves that he not only wasn't posing a threat, but was incapable of posing a threat.
Right.
And then, shot him, I think, with 10 bullets?
Yeah, multiple. I don't remember the number.
That's by my humble standards about as clear as daylight.
Yes. And then one of them clapped. clapped his hands.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, absolutely disgusting and repulsive. And I think that it also, I think, helped in terms of galvanizing protests. This is a disgusting reality, but with Renee Good, they were able to attempt to smear her because she was a lesbian, as Fox News et al. Pointed out constantly. She had pronouns in her bio. I mean, it's absurd that these people would say that out loud. I think one of the things that also made him very costly for Trump is the fact that he worked at a veterans hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just another thing. So before you go, I do of course want to talk to you about the Board of Peace. You were recently interviewed about it, and you had some really brilliant insights. And you said, when an entire organization is run by the whims of a single unstable individual, such questions are by definition difficult to answer. And that was about what was behind the Board of Peace. But you said it was about two key objectives. The Palestinian people, first and foremost, those in the Gaza Strip are a complete irrelevance, at most an obstacle to be removed. So what is your analysis, for those who haven't read the article, of this Board of Peace?
Well, these were just a few comments, actually. I was interviewed by an article written by someone else. But just to get back to your question, you may recall that on the 29th of September, when Trump unveiled his Gaza proposal in a joint press conference with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, it was a 20-point proposal. Most of the press conference was devoted to that and what was supposed to happen in the Gaza Strip. And then we were presented with this Board of Peace, which I think a lot of people kind of laughed off as yet another one of Trump's vanity projects. You have the Nobel Peace Prize, you have the Kennedy Center, and now you have this new organism, the Board of Peace, whose main purpose appears to be to make Trump its president and CEO. And then it kind of died off, and now it has come back with a vengeance. So when this whole issue was unveiled at Davos, the annual gathering of the rich and objectionable, it was all about the Board of Peace and very little about the Gaza Strip. And what we found is the Board of Peace. So first you have the Board of Peace, which consists for now, I think, of about 15 states represented by heads of state or heads of government, including, interestingly enough, Israel and a few other select characters. Trump is the head of it. Trump is the one who decides which states get invited to take to have a seat at the table. He decides which states are not invited. He decides whether they can remain members or not. And countries that either want to become permanent members rather than just serve a 3-year term, or countries that have not been invited to become members but want to become members, can purchase such membership for $1 billion. Under this, you have a Board of Peace Executive Committee, which is composed of, Prince Jared of Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Witkoff's assistant at Foggy Bottom, Marco Rubio, and a Cypriot Israeli businessman, Tony Blair, of course, and the former Bulgarian foreign minister and UN envoy in Iraq and then in Jerusalem, Nikolai Mladenov. And he, in turn, is responsible for something called the National Committee for the Administration of the Gaza Strip, led by a former Palestinian technocrat, Abed Shaat, and 14 others, each of whom have been selected by the Board of Peace, and presumably only on the basis of Israeli approval. But this whole structure is entirely under the thumb of Donald Trump. No decision can be made in this entire setup without the approval of Donald Trump. And any decision that does not enjoy his approval has no standing. This Board of Peace, according to what it has published, will take responsibility for all legal, legislative, and other aspects of the Gaza Strip. It's in effect a colonial administration, with the difference that in the classical colonial era, different states would compete to establish their exclusive sovereignty or hegemony over certain countries and territories. Here, it's kind of a joint corporate enterprise, if you will. And, this National Committee for the Administration of the Gaza Strip, these are essentially civil servants acting under the authority and at the direction of the Board of Peace. They don't make their own decisions. They can't formulate and implement policies. They do the bidding of the Board of Peace, and that is ultimately in the hands of Donald Trump. But I think another important thing, we have to remember that when this was first announced, European states in particular were positively euphoric about it. A Security Council resolution, UN Security Council Resolution 2803, was passed, even though it made absolutely no reference to the corpus of existing resolutions and international laws concerning the question of Palestine and the rights of the Palestinian people and so on. And it basically gave a carte blanche to the Trump initiative, including the Board of Peace, without having any details about what it was, how it would operate, its mandate, and its authority. And now these same Europeans are acting shocked that, as far as Trump and the Board of Peace are concerned, the Gaza Strip was kind of the bait to get everyone on board, because they knew that everyone would go along with whatever Israel and the United States wanted to do to the Palestinians, because that is subject to the central foreign policy principle of Israeli impunity, but didn't realize that Trump was going to use this as a template to be applied globally. And again, what happens in the Gaza Strip does not remain in the Gaza Strip. Rather, the question of Palestine is a canary in the coal mine. It is the battering ram subsequently used to apply in so many other places, so many other spheres, just as within the United States, the attacks on the Palestine Solidarity Movement and the legislation about boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and so on. Once that's in place, it's then applied to a variety of other issues, whether women's rights or climate or what have you.
Right. Yeah, it is pretty stunning. I had Jeremy Corbyn on the other day, and he mentioned how it's a rogues gallery that is carving up Gaza, basically.
Yeah, it is a rogues gallery, and it is a rogues gallery that is carving up Gaza, but it is also much more than that. I mean, if you look at, for example, the map and proposal unveiled by Kushner at Davos about the Gaza Strip, I mean, it's beyond any dystopia that even George Orwell, could consider or imagine. It's this kind of, marriage between private capital, corporations, technologies, in which Palestinians will become not only physical prisoners, but digital prisoners in this, totally dystopian concentration camp, where there won't be any cash because everything has to be electronic so it can be properly monitored, where you need a biometric pass to move from point A to B. It's really, and you really think that if this is applied to the Gaza Strip and is successfully applied, that all these people are going to say, well, it's good for Palestine, but it would be completely unethical to do this anywhere else, let alone in their own countries. You've been warned.
Right. Yeah. That is very astute analysis, as always, from Mouin Rabbani. Anything else you want to add before you leave for this session? Because we always love to have you on. So we're going to have you on
Thank
as
you.
much as possible.
I look forward to it. It was great talking to you.
Great. Thank you. You too. And everyone follow Mouin, and we will put a link to your Twitter and also to Jadalia, where you have a regular podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mouin. Have a great night. Okay, that was wonderful. I always, as I said, really do always learn so much from Mouin, and a lot of people in the comments were saying that as well. Make sure if you haven't already liked this stream, we're at over 1,000 people watching. That's very exciting. Let us see how we're doing on likes. 697. All right, keep it up. Everyone watching should like it. I know you're not all hate watching. We are going to bring on our next guest, and I'm so excited to bring this person on. She is one of the several lawyers for Mahmoud Khalil, and we are going to get an update about his case. So welcome to the show, Amy Greer. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you for joining. Wanted to get an update on Mahmoud's case, because I know that there had been some recent decisions. And for people who don't remember or perhaps didn't follow this case, Mahmoud was a negotiator at Columbia University during the encampments, which makes the portrayal of him as a threat particularly ironic, since he was literally approved of by the university administration. What do people need to know about Mahmoud Khalil, the person, and then what about the case?
Sure. Well, the first thing for those who are following along is Mahmoud is free. He has not been deported to Algeria. He is present in the country. He is free, and he is with his family. So for those who have been following and who have been expressing really great worry, I want to reassure on that front. As to where we are right now, for folks new to following this case, Mahmoud, as you described, was a graduate student at Columbia, studying to be a mediator, peacemaker, negotiator. I mean, that was quite literally the focus of his studies. And as he always says, he's a bureaucrat and has always wanted to be one, which I think is actually what uniquely suited him to be such an effective negotiator between these two different groups of people, the Columbia administration and the students at Columbia. And Mahmoud, because he's also an incredibly effective communicator, he got a lot of media presence as well, talking about the negotiations. And I think because he was so effective and because he's so beloved by so many people, that's actually why the Trump administration chose him, because I think they thought that if they take somebody like him, either nobody would say anything, or on the other end, people would be so demoralized that they wouldn't continue to activate on the issues of a free Palestine, for Palestinian life and liberty. And in fact, the opposite happened, which is it mobilized huge numbers of people. It brought together coalitions that probably wouldn't have existed previously. The First Amendment folks, the libertarian folks, the pro-Palestine folks, and everyone in between. And so now where we are is the Secretary Rubio issued a determination. Then that went to the Department of Homeland Security, where immigration allegations were brought. So he's in an immigration proceeding right now, and that's working its way through. So he does not have a final order of removal, but that case is proceeding. On the night that Mahmoud was taken, myself and another amazing attorney named Kyle Barron stayed up all night, and we filed what's called an immigration habeas petition. Habeas is of the body, and that basically is challenging the detention, the constitutionality of the detention. You see my dog is with us this evening in the background. Anyway, so we filed that in federal district court, which is a constitutional court in the District of New Jersey. That case, the District of New Jersey decided that judge decided he had the authority to hear our challenges to the Rubio determination and to the removal proceedings. But the Third Circuit just recently decided that actually that judge did not have the authority to hear us on the removal proceedings. And there's a lot of jargon around why that's the case, and we can get into that if you want to. But the long and the short is they reversed what the district court judge said with one dissenting opinion. And so now we'll bring that up to an en banc rehearing, which means that all the judges on the panel in the Third Circuit will reconsider that opinion. And obviously our hope is that they reverse, but we don't know where that stands. So that's sort of where everything is right now. But basically what also happened is the DHS press secretary went out and started announcing to the world that they were planning to deport Mahmoud to Algeria. And I just want to assure folks right now anyway that the Trump administration cannot legally remove Mahmoud from the country at this time. There are still court orders in place that say that until his court proceedings have run their course, he may not be removed from the United States.
Right. Yeah, you see a lot of, I will say it because you're a lawyer and you're, I'm sure, very judicious with your language, but I've seen a lot of ghouls celebrating as if he's literally on his way out. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to make sure to have you on to give people an update. Because even the way it's being reported on is so charged and ideological. I just wanted to play a video of, and this is an upsetting video of Mahmoud's arrest. He actually mentions you, I believe, in this video. You're the Amy he mentions, just to remind people of who he is. And, you just see how much decorum he has. Not that this matters, obviously. You don't deserve to be like disappeared. But what's interesting is that a lot of people were like, they really went for the wrong guy by targeting Mahmoud. And you kind of alluded to this. He, I think, was chosen. In some ways, it was a foolish decision, but in other ways, I think it was a wise one in that there are a lot of people out there who are much more, how would I put it? Like, controversial in what they say. And so if someone who's more controversial is gone after, then I think a lot of people feel safe. Like, all I have to do is avoid saying X, Y, Z. But Mahmoud was so, unimpeachable that I think that actually has a much more potentially chilling effect, because they're like, if this guy who didn't do anything except negotiate and spoke very, in a very calming way, was targeted, then of course I will be also. So let's just play this video.
Sure.
You're going to be under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
Stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone.
And at this point, his wife was pregnant, right?
Yeah, she was 8 months pregnant. Yeah.
Okay. He's not. I understand. He's not resisting.
Put your arm around. There's no use for this. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. Don't worry.
You guys really don't need to be doing all of that. Habibi, كيف بدي أتصل فيك?
Take Amy. Call Amy.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Yeah, they just handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do. Okay. And what should I do? I don't know. Nor. Let me ask. Can we get a name, please? Of can we get your name? I understand the lawyer is asking for your name.
Over there. We don't give our names.
The lawyer's asking for your name. He's saying they don't give their names.
Oh yeah, that's right. We'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
We'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza. Can you please specify what agency is taking him, please? Excuse me. They're not talking to me. I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally running away from me.
Wow. So I can't believe how together and calm and collected he was, and also how smart she was to film it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as it came out, excuse me, I'm recovering. As came out after that arrest, they, Mahmoud had been experiencing significant uptick in doxing. And so they had actually been talking and discussing what they would do if something like this happened, because that doxing campaign had suggested that they had given his address and his information to ICE and to Department of Homeland Security. And so, they were prepared. And also my colleague I am an associate at Draytell and Lewis, my colleague with me at the firm, we were both on the phone together with Noor, trying to talk her through this kind of these questions that you heard her asking. And I think what I really want to just also share with folks is, what they did is absolutely the right thing. And the first time you're speaking these questions and these words should not be when you're under that kind of pressure. And so the fact that they had practiced ahead of time, the fact that they had spoken about what they would do in this situation, I do think allowed them to operate with a certain level of calm. I'm sure they weren't feeling calm inside, but in the moment. And so I just really encourage people who are, protesting or who may be vulnerable to ICE for various reasons or anything like that, to work with partners. I hate doing those role practices myself, but there's something to be said about saying those words for the first time when you're not under duress, so that they're easier and come out more cleanly in the moment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, she handled it as well as she possibly could.
Yeah. That is really incredible. And what else do you think people need to know about excuse me, about staying safe? I mean, that advice that you gave is really useful. About the impact of this decision, not just on Mahmoud, but I mean, I've heard him speak, and he always is talking about kind of the larger cause. And he wrote like an amazing op-ed when he was, I think, was it a letter? He wrote a letter to
his son.
Yeah. Which was really beautiful. He's obviously aware of the kind of larger context here. So what is what do we need to know about not just his case, but the larger context?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that's really critical that you always hear from Mahmoud, like you said, is bringing it back to his moral and ethical clarity around Palestine and what he's been standing for this whole time, which is to stop the killing. I mean, this man has been arrested and detained for supporting life, and I think that that's just as simple as it possibly gets, to not have indiscriminate murder of Palestinian women, children, men, so that's as simple as it gets. What I think we can glean from all of this on the, I don't know if positive side, but maybe the grounding, to ground ourselves, is this is a scary moment. And I think anybody who says otherwise, is either a super risk taker, which I am not as an attorney, or, maybe disconnected from how much risk there actually is. At the same time, I think real power comes from knowing what you stand for and what it is you are working toward. And so many people who are speaking out for Palestinian lives, for Black lives, for immigrant lives, migrant lives, refugee lives, asylee lives, all of, trans lives, all of this thing is we are rooted in life, right? We are rooted in the support of life, of thriving, of creating a society that works for all of us, where all of us can live as we are, where we are, without being under threat. And I think that if we really live with that clarity within ourselves, I think that's where courage comes from. And I can't speak for Mahmoud and Noor, but I've spent a lot of time with both of them and others in the movement who have operated at great cost. Dr. Badr Kansuri, Rumeisa Ozturk, and others, having spoken with some of them and their attorneys as well, they too are operating with this really powerful moral and ethical clarity. And I think think that even though we are in a very scary moment, the more that we can connect into what it is we're trying to accomplish, which is a better world for all of us, I think, and really working within our own local communities, getting to know our neighbors, organizing locally, mutual aid funds, and, ways that we will accompany people to ICE appointments if they have them, or ways that will show up in other, for our community members. These are all ways to really root ourselves in power. And I think it won't take away the fear, but I do think that it'll create courage for people in the face of that fear. I also just think that, what's really scary right now is the Trump administration is operating in an sort of unpredictable way, and they're also flooding the zone. So people are taking in a lot of information at the same time, conflicting information. They might do one thing over here and another thing over there. It's hard to get our bearings. And that's what authoritarianism looks like, right? That's what it is. And as we heard from Judge Young in the District of Massachusetts in the American Association of University Professors versus Rubio, a recent case that was tried over the summer, the decision in September, and the judgment just last week, is we know that there's that conspiracy to suppress speech and all of that kind of stuff. That's happening, and that's real. And also, I think it just demonstrates a real fear, as Judge Young said, of this administration, of the fact that communities are gathering together. Communities are not being silenced. Communities are saying that they don't want this, that they want something, something different. They want their communities to not be under threat. They want to stick together. And so I really think that in the face of that lawlessness, there's also been really powerful community response, and even the courts are recognizing that. And so I think we need to ground ourselves in that as well.
And can you just fill people in on that case, the Rubio case, what it was and what the decision?
Oh yeah, it's very exciting. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a nerd, so it's exciting too, but
no, me too.
But anyway, basically what happened is the AAUP is a group of university professors. It's also the Middle East Studies Association, which is another scholarly group. But basically, they brought suit against Marco Rubio, saying that the two organizations as plaintiffs sued Marco Rubio. He was the defendant, basically claiming that a couple of things. One, they were arguing that the administration was infringing on many of their citizen members' rights to listen to immigrant voices, diverse voices in this country, by removing them off the streets and making people too afraid to speak. But the judge didn't go for that one so much. But what he did go for is the argument that that this administration was doing these kinds of arrests, these public arrests of Mahmoud and of Rumeysa Ozturk, which was a horrifying video to watch, Dr. Badr Khansuri and others, that they were doing this in a very public way and then humiliating them in a very public way on social media and on these press tours that they go on in order to scare people into not speaking anymore. And the judge agreed with that theory. The judge said there was a conspiracy amongst the administration, including Marco Rubio, the White House, etc., a conspiracy to suppress the First Amendment rights of people speaking out, for Palestinian life. There was a conspiracy. That is what the judge found. And that the intention behind these types of public humiliations and public arrests and embroiling people in really terrifying immigration proceedings that could potentially lead to them being physically removed from the United States, that the administration did all of this in the hopes that it would silence people and it would scare people. And sure enough, as this was happening, and this came out in the case, people were taking down their social media posts, they were removing scholarly articles, they were choosing not to attend conferences or not to give papers at conferences out of fear of retaliation, particularly if they weren't citizens. If they were like lawful permanent residents or visa holders, they were choosing to opt out of their own scholarly pursuits in order to protect themselves because of this administration. And in the discovery that was dropped, the evidence and the exhibits at the trial, which are now public, you can access them, and they're really fascinating. what you see is that this administration acknowledged that these folks, Mahmoud and others, were simply exercising their First Amendment rights, that they were exercising their right to political speech, and that they would likely have reason to challenge these determinations under the First Amendment because there was no other evidence that they were participating in anything unlawful, or if it was unlawful, this is not true of Mahmoud, but of some other, it was like a trespass in a library of a university. We're not talking about something unlawful in the way they talk about, these students. And so what really came out through that case was that this was intentional by the administration to suppress speech, particularly of the viewpoint that people held for pro-Palestine viewpoint, and that it was effective. And this judge basically declared that there was a conspiracy and that it's wrong, that they can't do that anymore, and said on the record the other day that this demonstrates that this administration either doesn't understand the First Amendment or is afraid of a robust First Amendment. Because when there's a robust First Amendment and when people feel free to engage in political speech, that means that potentially the ideas this administration is putting forth could get challenged in ways that are effective and that, gather more people. And so the case is really interesting. The September 30th decision by this judge is an interesting read for anybody who, it's not super legalese. He enjoys a little soaring rhetoric. And so, it's an interesting read. And then all of these documents are now publicly available as well.
Great. Well, anything else you want to make sure people know before you leave for the night? Leave the show?
I guess the last thing I'll just say is I know it's really important and valuable to Mahmoud and Noor to hear from everybody, support, to hear support.
What can we do to support them?
Yeah. And I also just want to say, that it's important to not allow ourselves to remain silent. For people who look like me, I think it's really important to know that just because the people who are being snatched off the street may not look like us, this is still the moment for us to expend our social capital, our political capital, legal capital, any capital, because as soon as the legal lines get drawn and get pushed into these more restrictive spaces, we all know from history that it's really challenging to get them back to where they were, let alone move us towards, a thriving society where everyone has, equity, rights, and all of that. So I just want to really encourage people to continue speaking out and not allow themselves to be frightened into silence.
Yeah, that's a great point. Historically, that is true. They use people who are, kind of canaries in the coal mine / people who are easily dismissed as not representing a lot of other people. And then they do XYZ to them. And then the precedent is set and then it applies to everyone. If you need that kind of self-interested motivation to speak out, a lot of people don't. They just speak out because it's the right thing to do. But that is actually important because we need to have everyone on board. So
it's going to take all of us.
Yeah.
Take all of us where we are with what we have. And also to not allow this administration to distract us from those, from those organizing actions and things like that. It's really important that we stay focused.
And is there anything people can do to follow what's happening, to any events people can attend or hashtags or?
I'm like the worst. I'm a total Luddite, I have to say, but there's nothing happening at the moment that I'm aware of. But Mahmoud has a social media presence, or his team has a social media presence. Our incredible colleagues at the American Civil Liberties Union, the New York Civil Liberties Union, and the Center for Constitutional Rights always have great content out there about Mahmoud's case. So that's a great place to follow. And also their websites have really great information as well. Mahmoud and Noor have a Chuffed site to help support them. A lot of people ask how they can financially support. So you can find them on Chuffed. And so these are the big things that are being, the big ways that people can follow along.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for coming on, for explaining so much, and also for everything that you do.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks to all of your listeners for choosing to stay awake. This is a moment we all need to be awake and working hard together. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Have a great night. Okay, that was wonderful. We are not even done yet. Those were all really great guests. Very excited to be talking about these important issues. And we have one more segment for you tonight. People may know that today is a Holocaust Memorial Day, and that was established in the early 2000s. And it was to mark the liberation of Auschwitz and by the Allies, obviously. And I thought it'd be appropriate to have on this show today guests who could speak well to that, who could speak to that. And, you know, a lot of people, as we've talked about on this show before, view the Holocaust as something that should teach us never again. And who is never again is kind of contested, right? So you have some people who say never again is never again for anyone, and other people who say, although they don't say it out loud usually, but they basically mean never again is never again for Jews. And in the name of never again, we'll do whatever we want to anyone, even though that doesn't ironically actually keep Jews safe. Not that it would be okay even if it did, but so Holocaust Remembrance Day was created in 2005 by the UN, and it's been quite weaponized by Israel and Zionists and Zionism to justify Israel's genocide right now and kind of continuous occupation. So I wanted to invite onto the show two people who really speak to never again, meaning never again for anyone. As you guys know, probably I'm working on a documentary that is about Holocaust survivors and their descendants who are protesting the genocide in Gaza and are saying precisely never again is now, but never again is now means stop killing the people of Palestine. They're saying not in our name. They're saying don't use our genocide to justify another one. Very inspiring people. And so I spoke to two of these people, Stephen Kapos, who is a survivor who was 7 years old when the Nazis invaded Budapest, Hungary. He lives in London, and Haim Bresheeth Zabner, who is the son of Holocaust survivors. He was born in a DP camp, actually, in Rome, but he was raised in Israel. He also wrote an amazing book called An Army Like No Other, which is about the IDF. And so Stephen Kapos is 87 years old, and he's been protesting against the genocide, which he describes not only as a genocide, but also a Holocaust. And he's a member of Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against Genocide. He lost 15 members of his extended family in the Holocaust, and his father was interned in Belsen and Theresienstadt. And he settled in London. And he visited Israel and was totally shocked by the racism there. And he became a member of the Labour Party in 1997. And after he resigned from the Labour Party after penning a widely circulated letter after the Labour Party warned him they would investigate him if he spoke at a leftist organization on Holocaust Memorial Day. And he is a member of the Camden branch of Palestine Solidarity Campaign and lately of the small network Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against Genocide. Haim Bresheeth Zabner was professor of media and cultural studies at University of East London and then a professorial research associate at the School of Oriental and African Studies. So he's a filmmaker, photographer, film studies scholar, and historian. His films include A State of Danger, a documentary on the first Palestinian Intifada. His books include An Army Like No Other, Had the Israel Defense Force Made a Nation? And he is a member of Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against the Genocide and a founding member of Jewish Network for Palestine. On November 4th, by the way, 2024, he was arrested over a speech he gave at a pro-Palestine demonstration outside the residence of Israeli Ambassador Tzipi Hotoveli in North London. And before we play this interview, you know, people probably know that a lot of Israel defenders chastise anyone who ever draws any comparisons between what the Israelis did to the people of Gaza and what the Nazis did to Jews and all the other people that they persecuted and tried to exterminate. And that's one thing. If people have like a real consistent standard where they just don't believe in these historical analogies, fine. But a lot of these same Israel defenders, shockingly enough, are very comfortable using the Holocaust to make comparisons, as long as they are being compared to Hamas. So before this interview, I just wanted to show a little mashup of all the people who are totally happy to weaponize the Holocaust in order to bring it to the present day to justify the genocide in Gaza.
Described it actually as the worst violence, the worst savagery perpetrated against Jewish people since the Holocaust.
There are a lot of forces, special forces, fighting those Hamas Nazis.
The difference between what these savages did to us and what the Nazis did to us is not very big. They basically wanted to annihilate every Jew.
It's the exact same ideology of annihilating Jews just because they're Jews.
The difference was not in intent, the difference was in capability. In the death camps of the Nazis, they murdered thousands of Jews each day and we could do nothing. Here they murdered 1,200 innocent people, and the next day, even though we had these failings on that day, which will be examined, we rolled them back.
The next step is to go on the offensive and to eradicate this Nazi-type Hamas.
Hamas are new Nazis.
They're trying to kill all the Jews. That's what the Nazis tried to do.
Nazi Hamas is soon to feel the full wrath of the Israeli people.
The Nazis believed that the Jewish race had to be exterminated, and so does Hamas.
IDF does not target civilians ever. We're not like our Nazi enemy. We will never target civilians deliberately.
After the Holocaust, the world said never again. It's now happening again.
Never again is now.
Never again, damn it, means never again.
Just like my grandparents and the grandparents of millions of Jews, from now on, my team and I will wear yellow stars.
And what about those Palestinians in hospital who are on life support, and babies and incubators whose life support and incubator will have to be turned off because the Israelis have cut the power to Gaza?
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? We're fighting Nazis.
And that was a little mashup of all the people who are happy to weaponize the Holocaust to justify its genocide in Gaza. So without any further ado, we're going to speak to people who reject weaponizing the Holocaust to justify another genocide. And let's take it away and pass the mic to Haim Bresheeth Zabner and Stephen Kapos. To have you guys on to talk about Holocaust Memorial Day, because you are two people who I would say apply the lessons of the Holocaust to everyone as opposed to just a select group of people. So what is the significance of Holocaust Memorial Day, and how does what's happening in Gaza affect it?
Well, the World War II Holocaust was obviously an enormously significant event. It was the first industrialized extermination of a people. In that, the hurt and the suffering has been proportionately huge, naturally. When it was over, and all those who survived it had one overriding wish, which is never to repeat it to any group of people, nation, or to nobody, simply. And what happened, in fact, particularly because of the Zionist project, the horrors of the Holocaust and the enormity of it was used as a foundation for impunity that the Zionists and the Israeli state has claimed from there on. Not only to do anything that they wanted for their continued purpose of apartheid and ethnic cleansing, but also to actually block any comparison or critical comment about it, had created a kind of taboo almost against the open discussion of the meaning of the Holocaust, and particularly any comparison with qualities of subsequent behavior to the Nazi regime. And I am very keen that this taboo should be broken as often as possible, because some of the qualities and the direction of travel are rather similar. And there should be no reason for not saying so. And a certain atmosphere of fear has been created around it by the Zionist propaganda and practices, that anyone who makes the slightest comparison would be stamped as anti-Semitic, which is entirely false. And I think that's really what I want to start with. And I just want to mention an episode that I often bring up as an illustration of what it means to kind of hijack the memory of Holocaust. I was watching a United Nations Security Council meeting one day when the Israeli ambassador's turn it was to make a comment. And before he started, he stood up and very theatrically put a yellow star on himself.
Just like my grandparents and the grandparents of millions of Jews, from now on, my team and I will wear yellow stars. We will wear this star until you condemn the atrocities of Hamas and demand the immediate release of our hostages.
Now, this was a sickening sight for somebody like myself who actually had to wear, by decree and by stamping other, the yellow star. I was completely disgusted by this sight. But that is a kind of symbolic illustration of how this memory of the Holocaust is being subverted and misused. And similarly, not by action so much as by words, Netanyahu made a statement at Yad Vashem to say, never again is now.
We will defeat our genocidal enemies. Never again is now.
And that was quite clearly a reference to the actions of the genocide going on in Gaza, claiming that somehow was justified again by the Holocaust. These are two sickening examples, but the use of it in an inverted way as justification for impunity is almost continuous and unending to the present day. And I think we have to fight it all the time.
The first thing I wanted to say is that I've tried to find some information in around 100 institutions dealing with the Holocaust. These are museums, research centers, memorial centers, study centers, you name it. There are more than 100 globally, all over the Western world. They don't exist in other places. These institutions are run by Zionist Jews. And how do we know that? I went into the websites, it took me 2 days. I went into the website one after the other, looking for any reference to a current genocide, the one in Gaza. You have to understand that all these institutions have in their guidelines and in their public pronouncements a total commitment to end genocide wherever it happens. Interestingly enough, the one genocide, which is now happening for 2.5 years, has not been mentioned by any of them. I was quite shocked. I thought there will be like, half of them mentioning something, not much, but saying, there is a genocide, or some people call it a genocide or something like that, but nothing was really shocking. So that's the first thing. Zionism is both doing a genocide and denying it with a huge machinery of commemoration that it has put in there. And when I say it, I mean, the Western Zionism, because it's not limited to Israel.
So I know that Haim and Stephen, all of us have discussed the kind of comparisons between what the Nazis did and what the Israelis have done. And it's obviously not apples to apples. There's an apples to oranges aspect of it. But certainly there's a real rank hypocrisy that we see when people are happy to compare, for instance, Hamas to the Nazis. But whenever you compare what the Israelis did to what the Nazis did, you're weaponizing the Holocaust, right? And Stephen, you gave that perfect example of the Israeli ambassador to the UN, desecrating the memory of the Holocaust by comparing himself basically to the Jews who had to wear the star, the yellow star during the Holocaust. And Mark Etkind, who is the co-founder with you, Haim, of this great organization, Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against the Genocide, compared a photo of your father to a photo of a child in Gaza. Can you describe what we're seeing on the right side, Haim?
Well, on the 8th of May, 1945, the Americans reached Mauthausen, which was not a death camp. It was a work camp. One of its sub-camps was called Gusen. And my father, with few hundreds others from Auschwitz, after Auschwitz was closed, they walked all the way from Poland to Austria. Half of them died on the road. And on arrival, they were put to work as slave labor in Gusen, where Messerschmitt planes were built. They were built in the mountain, and because horses were too expensive, the trolleys were actually pushed or pulled by the inmates. The death rate was the average inmate lived for 2 weeks there. I don't know how my father existed for almost 3 months there. So he was 32 kilos. You can see him sitting on the ground with 3 of his inmates, and they're eating some bully beef that the Americans gave them. The 2 on the right died after eating the bully beef. The other 2 were in a terrible situation, including my father, of course, but they survived. And of course, the Americans were not to know that they give those very hungry people that didn't eat meat for years, it's basically like killing them. So the child on the left is about the same kind of weight that my father was. You can see my father on the ground sitting the second from the left, and all of them are really emaciated terribly. So we have now the same kind of starvation that was actually announced as a policy by the Israelis. And Keir Starmer apparently said that Israel has a right to limit food and medication, and he said it on television.
I'm very clear. Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself, and Hamas bears responsibility.
A siege is appropriate?
Cutting off power, cutting off water? Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation.
Not only did the Israelis do it, but the West has actually supported and agreed to it.
And what does it feel like to you when you see this image that is in many ways comparable to your father's image?
Well, that the Jews are doing this to others, I mean, I don't know if I can find words to describe this. This is the worst thing that I have seen in my life. Jews doing to others what was done to them. I prefer it that my father didn't see this, didn't ever imagine that Jews could do such terrible things to others that were done to them. It's better that he hasn't seen it, or my mother, or anyone else that was in that camp and suffered this fate. How can anyone justify to themselves, it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not, a human being starving a child so they become a skeleton? I mean, I don't understand this. I really don't understand this.
I'm particularly struck by the distant figure on the left, who obviously is approaching the group. And he is identical in being emaciated, like the child shown for comparison. Absolutely identical. Well, it's absolutely horrifying. I agree with Haim. I have the same horror of feeling, well, almost not comprehending how, having had this experience, it can then be the same people could inflict it on another people, like the Palestinians. Even before we reach the repeat of the kind of genocide and Holocaust aspect, I was horrified already at the racism which underlies it when I visited Israel and seen this amazing decline of moral standards in relation to another people, and how that infected the whole country, it seemed, and including my own family. This is when I sort of turned against Zionism, really. How that propaganda and I think partly the creation of a false fear that unless you are cruel and suppressing towards the Palestinian people, they would drive you into the sea. That was the kind of general assumption. And how that could take hold with people who not only actually experienced similar humiliation and suffering.
This is not what the Jews died for, to justify another genocide. No, my family didn't die for that. And Stephen's family didn't die for that, yeah? And we don't agree to this. But what we have here is, first of all, after the occupation of Palestine and the Palestinians, there is an occupation of the Jewish mind. The Jewish mind in the diaspora is occupied. Judaism itself is occupied. This is not the Judaism of my family in Poland. This Judaism now, when chief rabbis support genocide, is ill, is deeply sick, is in trouble, and is putting all of us Jews in trouble, in harm's way of anti-Semitism and other hatreds. And so there is another occupation, the occupation of the West, the elites of the West, the political, the arms, the banking and finance. The elites of the West are now doing what Zionist billionaires want them to do. Now, name another small group that has the power that the Zionist billionaires now have over the American system. It is shocking, it is terrifying, and they use that control for supporting not just the genocide, but all the crimes that Israel has enacted for such a long time, 80 years or more, actually. That is the worst thing that Jews can do to humanity and to other Jews.
I think we've made it very clear in this interview and other interviews the way that using the Holocaust and using Never Again to justify another genocide is a total perversion of morality. But, you know, there's another discussion happening right now because of what just happened in Minneapolis. And I wanted to show what Governor Walz of Minnesota had to say. And more, I think, significantly is the way that people have responded to what he had to say. So let's take a listen to what he had to say. And this is, of course, in light of the murder of Renee Good and more recently, Alex Pretti.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
I want to show a response to that from Randy Fine, who is a congressman from, not surprisingly, Florida. He's a Republican. And he has in the past said things that are so offensive that they've been limited visibility on Twitter, on X, and that takes a lot. But he has called for Gaza to be nuked. He said that Palestinianism is evil. He says that there's a culture built on violence and we need to start treating it that way. We need to start to call evil for what it is and not make excuses. And the fact of the matter is the Palestinian cause is an evil one. The only end of the conflict is complete and total surrender by those who support Muslim terror. In World War II, we did not negotiate a surrender with the Nazis. We did not negotiate surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same there. There's something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture and it needs to be defeated. Okay, so let's look at how he responded to Governor Tim Walz's comments. Comparing the removal of illegal immigrants to the Holocaust is anti-Semitic and repulsive. Will Jewish Democrats call him out? I won't hold my breath. And I want to show another response. This is a Jewish American journalist, Batya Ungar Sargon, and I want to play what she had to say.
Lost in the analogy is the fact that the Gestapo was arresting German citizens, of course, who the Nazis decided were no longer worthy of rights due to their ethnicity, not people who committed a crime entering Germany illegally and then more crimes once they were inside. Let's be clear, when they call ICE the Gestapo, they're calling Americans Nazis. After all, ICE carrying out mass deportations is what the majority voted for. And sorry, but this doesn't make them racists. It makes them patriots. To allow people to stay who came illegally is to massively incentivize such a flagrant abuse of our laws. And contrary to the mythology on the left, you can't just ask people politely to leave the greatest country on earth and think that they will, especially the hardened criminals among them.
In her tweet that accompanies this video, she said, beyond disgusting, Governor Walz is comparing the innocent Jews that the Gestapo were hunting for extermination, who were citizens, to the illegal migrant murderers, rapists, sex offenders, and child abusers that ICE is seeking to deport because they broke our laws again and again.
Well, I want to remind us that the most used word that Hitler used to describe Jews is terrorists. And of course, it took few years to remove citizenship from the Jews of Germany, but actually they lost the citizenship even before the change of the law because they had no rights at all after that time in 1933, when after all of them that worked in public office were sacked, they didn't have any rights whatsoever.
Right.
They did not exist within the legal system of the Third Reich, and they were terrorists. This is how they were understood to be by the Nazis, definitely by Hitler and his henchmen. So to kill them was not a crime. There's a lot of theorization about this by a number of people that have written about the Second World War, including Jewish historians. So it becomes a mitzvah, in the Jewish rendering of social duties, to kill Palestinians becomes a mitzvah. And in the same way that she
means like a good
describes,
deed.
you know, she says these are not racist. You can't call them Gestapo. You know, we've seen what happened to those people that were killed. I mean, if you want to arrest them, arrest them. Why are you killing them? They haven't committed a crime. You don't know that they've committed a crime. You didn't ask them. One of them is sitting in a car. The other one is walking. And there is no problem arresting them. They don't have arms. They don't use arms. So they're not terrorists. They are not acting as criminals.
And I wonder if Batya would be okay, given that what she says here is beyond disgusting. Governor Walz is comparing the innocent Jews that the Gestapo were hunting for extermination who were citizens. I wonder how she felt about killing Jews once they were no longer citizens. Like, was she okay with that? Then does it make it an appropriate comparison?
Of course, the Palestinians are not citizens of any country, exactly because Zionism is denying them the rights for almost 80 years. So that's what the Germans have done. Once you remove the legal rights of a citizen, or you remove them as citizens, you can kill them. And this is the machinery that Trump is using in the United States. And I would say that Gaza and the genocide in Gaza has affected the rights of everyone, everywhere in the West. You know, we were arrested as terrorists in London. There are now almost 3,000 people that held a piece of paper. And for that, they are arrested as terrorists and they can sit for years in prison. The whole issue of legal protection for people who have not committed any crime is now, you know, there is no law. International law first died, then the local law in Britain, in France, in Germany, and of course in the United States. That's the next thing that happens. Nobody has got law rights. You know, we lost our rights.
This question about whether somebody is a citizen or not is a technicality. What about humanity? Even if they are not citizens, you got to treat them with due humanity and apply standards of law to them. This distinction is completely artificial, really, and technical.
Not to mention, by the way, that the recent people killed by ICE were, and again, I wouldn't be okay with it if they were not citizens, but the two recent people killed by ICE were both citizens. So even if you were going to be this like nationalist supremacist, which is indefensible, you're just being inaccurate. Yeah.
Well, if you start on a journey towards fascism, which this really is, it's the direction of travel is set.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to us to stop it, but it's set. It's not full fascism yet, but there are characteristics of fascism like this. And once that starts, standards fall. All standards fall.
Right. I want to show another scary response to the allegations, to the comparisons to the Gestapo, which again, you don't have to accept those comparisons, but I think you probably don't want to violate the First Amendment over them. Let's hear what Greg Bovino had to say about that. And he's Border Patrol's acting commander.
Calling law enforcement names like Gestapo or using the term kidnapping, that is a choice that is made. There are actions and consequences that come from those choices. And then when you choose, when someone chooses to listen to a politician, a so-called journalist, a community leader that spouted that type of vilification towards law enforcement or anything else, when you choose to listen to that, that is a choice and there are consequences and actions there also. I think we saw that yesterday.
So it's not ICE who's committed crimes. The blame should lie with people who dare compare ICE to Gestapo. They are the ones who have blood on their hands.
Even before that, dare to listen to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This is real thought police in action. The way the press is acting, the mainstream press, is very similar to the cowed nature of how people acted tolerating the Holocaust. And so you have to be very careful, and they acquire deep guilt as a result.
Right. Yeah, and it's actually interesting because you see there have been examples of the media being good on on ICE in a way that they weren't. When I say good on ICE, being critical of ICE and being skeptical of ICE's claims in a way that they're not at all with the IDF, which shows that they're capable of being critical thinkers when they're not indoctrinated with Zionism. Yeah. Which which causes them to dehumanize people. I want to show one more example, by the way, of another person, and this is someone who was an anti-Semitism czar under Trump, Eli Kohanim. She also responded to Tim Waltz. The Jewish people want you to stop minimizing the memory of the Holocaust with your disgraceful comparisons, Tim Waltz. So, what do you guys say to this? This woman claiming to speak on behalf of all the Jewish people, and what do you say since she's claiming to speak on as a Jew, what do you guys say as a Holocaust survivor and the son of two Holocaust survivors?
I think the way that Jews behave in the West now, and especially in America, and most of those Jews that we're seeing are famous, some of them are billionaires, they're speaking as a kind of moral voice. Stephen was before describing the fact that Jews and Israelis are forever acting as victims. Even when they kill others in great numbers through a genocide, they describe themselves as victims. And they're all, you've seen what happened when 15 people died in Australia recently. The whole situation there is not very clear until today. I can't really go into the case, but they are always describing themselves as victims. And when those billionaires and people who are actually the elite in the American society are standing there and speaking for us and speaking for the dead people on the Holocaust, this is disgusting. What they're doing is immoral, is not acceptable at all. And yet they're doing it, and they're getting time on the media, as Stephen pointed out, to do it, to basically other the Palestinians that die in great numbers. In Britain, for example, if a child dies in Ukraine, it'll be on the news the morning after. How many children died in Gaza? We will need 100 years to describe it on the news, but there was no item that described them after they died. They never had a name, and they're not even reported about. So what the media is doing is, I think Stephen is right, enabling the genocide. Without that type of activity, the genocide would never pass. But they normalize it. They make it okay to kill people that, as you said, are not citizens. Yeah, so it's okay to kill them. It's okay to kill children because they will grow to be terrorists. Yeah, so let's kill them now. It's okay to kill women in labor. It's okay not to have hospitals for them because all were destroyed. All these things are fine, and our politicians are behind them, and those politicians belong in jail.
Here's another example of criticism of daring to apply any lessons of the Holocaust to the present, unless I think they somehow support Zionism. The U.S. Holocaust Museum says Anne Frank was targeted and murdered solely because she was Jewish. Leaders making false equivalencies to her experience for political purposes is never acceptable. Despite tensions in Minneapolis, exploiting the Holocaust is deeply offensive, especially as anti-Semitism surges.
Of course, you can't talk about people who are not Jewish.
Right.
As long as the people who die are Jewish, we're fine. If the person is not a Jew, then we shouldn't actually speak against it. This is sick. Not for anyone, yeah? It wasn't about Jews, not for anyone. Jews were not even the majority of people dying in the Holocaust. Many more from the Soviet Union died. So the idea that we always are again going to talk only about Jews and for Jews, I think is really terrifying. In a country like the United States that is built on the people from all over the world who came and were saved by the United States. It was a great light that people followed for over 150 years. And now it became such a toxic society that people are hunted in the streets like the Jews were. I think that's a terrifying turn of events.
Well, it's just ironic also because not only is it morally wrong, but this exploiting the Holocaust is deeply offensive, especially as anti-Semitism surges. I think that maybe what's helping anti-Semitism surge is stuff like this, is stuff like the weaponization of never again, refusing to apply it to people who aren't Jews, and also at the same time, even more horrifically, using it to justify a genocide of another people. So if these people cared so much about anti-Semitism, maybe they would just keep their mouths shut.
Many years ago, there was a play in Israel that was called Don't Touch My Holocaust, exactly about that. You can talk about the Holocaust when you talk about Jews, but don't ever touch it when Jews are doing it rather than being killed. Because Jews are always victims, even when they kill. They are only killing because they're victims. And this is quite sick.
Yeah. And one other example, especially because you just pointed out, Haim, that it wasn't just Jews and the majority of the people killed by the Nazis were not Jews, although obviously Jews were the biggest proportionally impacted people during the Holocaust in terms of what proportion of them were killed. But I want to show another example of this absolute sadism. Maher Tarabishi, age 62, was taken by ICE last October when he exited his immigration check-in appointment in Texas. And by the way, he's from Jordan originally. He was the primary caregiver for his 30-year-old son, Wael, who suffers from a chronic muscular condition called Pompe disease. His father provided 24-hour care for many years. Wael died today, his family told me. Wael's health had been declining ever since his father's detention. He never got to say goodbye to his father. Maher will never see his son again. Maher came to the United States in 1994. He is not a criminal. He paid taxes. He raised a family. He was attending his immigration check-ins reliably. Now that family is destroyed. For what? If our government has any compassion, Maher Tarabishi should be released from detention now. He should be allowed to attend his son's funeral. May Wael rest in peace. Is this what America has become? Is this what we want America to be? Spread the word. And hashtag free Maher Tarabishi. This is Wael, who obviously was disabled and died in large part because his father was his primary caretaker was imprisoned for the crime of going to a check-in, an immigration check-in. And I'm just struck by the fact that the first people, one of the first groups that the Nazis went after were people with disabilities.
Indeed, they killed about 30,000 or 40,000 people with disabilities. This was the beginning of the genocide before the Jews were killed. So that's okay to kill them because they're disabled. Let's remember that Lemkin, the Jewish jurist that basically wrote the Genocide Convention, called the crime of genocide man's inhumanity to man. It's a bit, sexist.
Humans
but these were, it would be better if it was humans.
We'll forgive him now.
Sure. But what you are showing us are examples of man's inhumanity to man.
Right.
And to say this has nothing to do with us because they are not citizens, or even if they are citizens, I was worried about them. Every Jew who kills a Palestinian in Israel, and I'm talking about citizens, citizens, as if it makes a difference that you kill a citizen or not citizen. But Israeli citizens are killed all the time by Israeli citizens. It just there on the one side there are Jews, and the other side there are Arab Palestinians, and they're killed normally because they somehow frightened the Jewish victim. The Jew might be with a gun and the Palestinian has nothing, but still they frightened you. They frightened us because we've taken everything from them. We've taken the land, the homes, the hospitals, the schools, everything. And now we take the tents from them and kill them. We leave them nothing at all. And then we feel that they are frightening us. A child might frighten an Israeli soldier, he will kill them. And then, of course, there is no legal process. Nobody's ever brought to court because you just killed a Palestinian. That's fine.
Well, that was an interview with Haim Bresheeth Zabner and Stephen Kapos. And actually, you can see the full interview where we talk about things like the war in Iran and lots of really fascinating discussions at Patreon, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. But of course, we gave you, I think, like 40 minutes of interview. And we gave you the really important parts about the Holocaust and about the weaponization of the Holocaust, and also, of course, about the way that people are so selective with their historical comparisons, which I find fascinating. Thank you guys all so much for watching the show. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Phantomus Fanta. We also want to just tell you that Haim Bresheeth Zabner and Stephen are both in this documentary that we're working on about Holocaust survivors and their descendants speaking out against the genocide. Let's see. Anything else I have to say, Brad? No. Okay. Make sure, as always, that you hit the like. Make sure also that you subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, hit subscribe and then the bell. And again, that is because you don't want to miss these additional live streams we are doing more and more. Also, if you can become Patreon supporters, again, at the $5 level, you get excellent access to bonus and extended interviews, early interviews. If you can't swing that, you can just pay $1 a month. That's literally $12 a year. And that is how you can just support the show. So that's a pretty affordable rate. Thank you so much for the kind comments. I see a lot of people were very moved by that. I do really think that the world would be a much better place if more people were like Haim and Stephen, and less people were like Batya and Randy Fine. And I think that's it. And we will see you next week. And Jonathan Whittle, someone suggested as a guest. Oh, super chat. Sorry. Can you try to interview Dr. Yaakov Rabkin? Yes. Oh, sorry. Bucky's playing with the toy. I got scared he was peeing. Can you try to interview Dr. Yaakov Rabkin? Yeah. Okay, I will. Thank you. And that was from Mish999. Brian writes, another great show, Katie. Gray Scout Epsilon. Why isn't anyone talking about Israel conducting nuclear tests almost simultaneous to inferring threats against Iran? Well, actually, I don't remember if we talk about the nuclear stuff, but if you go to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show, you will find that in this extended discussion, Haim Bresheeth Zabner talks about Iran, and he wrote, "An army like no other, how the Israel Defense Forces made a nation." That's a great book. So anyway, everyone, I really enjoyed this, and we will see you guys next week.
I did everything right and they indicted me. And I don't know what the I'm doing. Antifa!